Hello, this is Janet from janetsandberg.com, and you're listening to the Phoenix Wisdom Podcast, the weekly show that talks to peers and professionals who open up about their darkest moments when they felt like ending it all, why they didn't, and how they transformed their lives in order to triumph over the darkness and despair. Please remember to subscribe if you'd like to hear more inspiring stories. Hello, and welcome to the Phoenix Wisdom Podcast. I am your host, Janet Sandberg, and today we are joined by Terri DiMauro. I hope I said that right. I meant to ask you before we started. I'm like, are you DiMauro or DiMauro or
I give
DiMauro? I assume it's Italian.
it is. I give it the duh. It's a nice little DiMauro.
All right. Just introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure thing. So I am 35 this year, which is kind of a big milestone for me. I have two amazing kids. One's 6 years old. He's a 6-year-old boy of all boys. So he's an SK right now. And then I have a 9-month-old daughter. She was born in August. And so just going through the whole infant, newborn, baby, getting into crawling stage has been fun. And it's also super interesting to note the differences between the two kids and the similarities and all of that stuff. And so I'm primarily stay-at-home mom, and I work on the side as a photographer for lifestyle and small events. And I also dabble in custom sugar cookies and some relationship coaching as well. So keeping busy for sure.
Yeah, you're a woman of many talents.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
need the different areas of focus. I find I was recently diagnosed ADHD, so that makes a lot more
That
sense
makes a lot of
now.
sense.
I do like to have, different outlets and different things to focus on depending on kind of where my brain and my mood is that day.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes
Mhm.
sense. All right. So we are here to tell stories of transformation and triumph. So why don't you let us know what was going on in your life when you felt really low, when you thought maybe you didn't want to be here? What was happening?
So for me, like my story starts super young, which is I think important to highlight. Because those things can start when you're a lot younger and don't always get picked up on. So the first time I was really thinking, you know what, maybe I shouldn't really be here anymore, it was in grade 6.
Oh, wow.
And I'd been struggling with what I've now learned was undiagnosed generalized anxiety disorder with depressive episodes. I've been struggling with that since grade 3, and it got worse. And because of the way things were at home, now I came from a very loving, which is one of the reasons I'm still here. But I'm the youngest of 3, and my siblings are a fair bit older than me. They're 8 and 6 years older.
Okay.
So they were going through their teenage whatevers at that time. And so my sister ended up becoming pregnant and, having the baby, and they were living with us. So that whole dynamic became very overwhelming for me.
Mhm.
Uh, and I loved it because it was exciting because there was a baby and everything. But, it took a lot of focus and attention away from me. And I was still pretty young at that time.
Right.
Um,
So, sorry, just to
yeah.
interject here, if we have anybody who's not in Canada and listening, so grade 6, you would have been 11.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. And I'm born earlier in the year, so like 11, 12. But in and around that age. And I think at that point when I started like having those thoughts and considerations, the reasoning behind it was because like I'm not important.
Mhm.
Like there's so much other stuff that's going on that's more important than me. And I'm just
Wow.
like extra space. I'm taking up extra space. And so in my mind, it was like, well, would it be better and easier for everyone else if, I was out of the picture? So it wasn't so much like necessarily that I was even hurting or, at that age, even understanding the concept of what it would mean to not be alive anymore. It was
Mhm.
more so like, how do I make things easier for the people that I love that are struggling?
Right.
And
Right.
I
Well,
think,
and plus you would have had also like those puberty hormones going crazy and affecting the way that you think as well. Plus the anxiety, plus the depression, plus all of the other stuff that was going on at home. That is a lot.
yeah. And so, I mean, obviously it was never anything that, I went through with, and I never, attempted, but, uh, for me, it was like, I don't the reason I didn't was because I knew I had people who cared about me and who would
Mhm.
be sad if I wasn't here. So I feel like that's really important to highlight because especially now, like being a parent and seeing how um overwhelming and engrossing it can be for maybe one child over another for a little bit. Um, just making sure that you do take that opportunity to show both or all of your kids that you do love them and that they are loved and that they are, safe and all of that stuff, because that's really what kept me around. And again, not understanding the full grasp of what it would mean if I wasn't.
Mhm.
It was more so just maybe it would be better for everyone. So, really happy that I did have what I knew to be a very loving family. It was just a very difficult and overwhelming circumstance.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, it obviously was a lot for everybody in your household
Mhm.
to deal with. How did you said, you just got through it because you knew that you were loved. Was there anything else? Did your parents ever know
I
what
don't
was
think
going
so.
on with
Like,
you?
they knew, I would say, like, my mom knew something was probably up. I would miss a lot of school. Like, I think she knew that, um, mental health wise, I wasn't great.
Okay.
She was very aware of that, and understandably, I wouldn't necessarily be at that time with everything that was happening. And she did, do little things to make me feel special. I still have it. She got me a penguin mug because I love penguins. And we used to have tea together all the time. And she's like, I know that you've been feeling like you're not important. I want you to
Okay.
remember that you are. So, like I said, I still have it. And every time I see it, it makes me
Yeah.
smile and remember that. Um, and like, so my nephew, I became an aunt when I was 10. And I remember saying, I think my nephew would miss me, even though he's the reason
Yeah.
that,
Right.
everything's going so crazy right now. I love him.
Right.
And I think he would miss me because, I mean, we were so close in age. We were like brother and sister.
Right. Yeah.
So that relationship did a lot to like keep me around and remember that again, I had a place and I was important. And it was just, I think that was when I started learning that um things are going to happen, right? Tough things are going to happen, and you get through it as a family together. And
Mhm.
that is ultimately what we did. um and so after that, like I said, I was undiagnosed anxiety until I was almost 30.
Oh, wow. That's
I
a long time.
Yeah, I got my official diagnosis like while I was pregnant with my son, so that was 6 7 years ago now. um so I struggled moving forward, and it went from like suicidal thoughts to self-harm thoughts. And
Mm.
this is like entering high school time.
Okay.
And the reason, and I still struggle with them from time to time, and the reason is because I want to make what's going on in my mind that nobody can see real for other people to see, right?
Right.
So it wasn't so much because I know there are different reasons for self-harm, and a lot of people will do it, for the pain itself, for the pain rush.
Right. They just want to feel something.
That's
Yeah.
right. Whereas for me, it's like I want to show you that what I'm dealing with mentally is real, you know,
Right.
like a manifestation of it. Again, I'm thankful that it was never something that I went ahead and did. I was able to talk myself back from actually going through with any sort of physical act of it, but struggled immensely. Had sharp objects and being like, no, I really shouldn't. Um, there was one time I got really upset, and I had this old couch in my room. It was like this horrible little fold away couch. I got really upset and overwhelmed about something, and I just remember like just punching at it. I was in grade 12, so I was probably like 16, 17, and I still have the scars on my knuckles. And
Wow.
they just completely opened up, and they were at school, they would start bleeding. And I've always had a very good relationship with my mom, but that was always one thing I never spoke to her about. All she did was look at me and go like, "Are you okay? Are you safe?" And I said yes, and she dropped it. Um, so there is a lot of still, that buildup of of needing some sort of release, some sort of act, a physical, either something you can see or something
Mhm.
tangible,
Yeah.
right? To make what's going on that nobody can see real for them.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big part of whether you're talking about self-harm or you're talking about suicide. It's not the fact that I want to hurt myself, and it's not the fact that um like I want to die necessarily. It's that I need to show you that something really big is happening even though you can't see it.
Mhm.
And then that step further saying, I just want that pain to stop.
Yeah.
And that's where I started getting into as I got older, because I did end up with a lot of chronic illnesses that have chronic fatigue, chronic pain, debilitating, migraines and body pains. And when I get into really bad flares that don't go away within a week or two, and I start wondering, oh God, like, is this a new normal for me? I get into those thoughts again. Can I keep living like this? I don't want to die, but I don't want to live in this pain anymore either. And there's, so far anyways, nothing I've found that can alleviate that pain except waiting it out, until it gets a little
Mm.
better.
Yeah.
So it's been a very lifelong struggle. I have, I did a few years of therapy before I had my son, which was very helpful. And then I was placed on medication for anxiety, which was amazingly like life-changing for me. Super
Mhm.
small dose, but just enough to be like, getting that,
Yeah.
oh my God, like this is maybe how I'm supposed to be living and taking part in my life and not being so overwhelmed and worried about controlling everything. And I mean, we could talk about how that stems from being out of control when I was a kid, right? It all fits together.
Yeah.
Um, so I've done that. And then more recently, getting diagnosed and medicated for ADHD was that last little kind of bit that helped me really get a handle on the overwhelm and the stress and be like, okay, like I got this. So it took a long time. You're
Yeah.
talking grade 3 till 30 years old. That's a huge chunk of time.
Yeah.
I'm very happy and very fortunate that I did get things figured out and I was able to talk to someone and learn, what was going on a little bit better and how to manage it more.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's really key. And I think now, well, there's more of us willing to talk about our mental health, which helps a lot. Even just to help people feel less alone, which is what I'm one of the major reasons that I'm doing this podcast. But also, the more we talk about it, the more we're aware of what other people have gone through. We can see that in ourselves and be like, oh, maybe that's a thing that I need. Maybe I have anxiety. Maybe I have ADHD, and things can change.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to be getting tested soon for ADD as well. And I learned that there's also something called late onset
Mhm.
ADHD and ADD, where it comes on in the middle of your life and you were fine as a kid, but and some people have it the other way. It really affects them as a kid and they kind of grow out of it. So don't ever write anything off, basically. um and be aware of yourself and how you think and how you function. But it really resonated with me when you said, the self-harm piece of, we just want people to see how we're feeling.
Mhm.
Like it's so hard to explain it with words, right? When people are like, oh, like they can tell there's something not right. But trying to explain those feelings, they're so big, they're so overwhelming. And for somebody who has never experienced that, they're just not going to understand
Mhm.
unless you do something super extreme.
Yeah, because um, I would talk and I would try to explain, and it's exactly like you're saying, like people they kind of get it, but then it kind of gets brushed off. Or, you don't feel like it's being taken as seriously by who you're talking to as it feels for you.
Right.
So like this feels huge to me, but when I explain it to someone, they're like, that doesn't sound like such a big deal, maybe, right? And then
Mhm.
so then you're still left. And I don't know. I other people probably experience it too, where it's like you want to explain yourself clearly, but then you also don't want to bring the other person down.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah,
Or
you
you're
don't want
like,
to
I
burden
want you to,
them.
yeah, I don't want you to, or I do want you to understand, but I also like, I don't want to scare you, or I don't want to make you feel bad. And then you just get left with, ruminating in your own feelings and head again.
Right. And then it just gets worse and it spirals. And that was me when I was hitting bottom sort of repeatedly.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to tell my boyfriend, husband, whatever he was at the time, because I didn't want him to worry. I didn't want, like, I knew that I wasn't going to act on it,
Yeah.
right? But I was still having those thoughts and having those feelings. And I'm like, but I don't want to worry anyone with all of this. Like,
Mhm.
so I'm just not going to say until I got past it. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I was having all these really terrible thoughts and suicidal ideations. But I got through it. It's fine. They're like, why didn't you tell us? I'm like, well, I didn't want to worry you.
Yeah.
Um, which is not really the best way to do things, I will say. Like, it is really good, especially if that person can understand
Mhm.
where you are. And, you want to be able to explain it to them so they understand, but you don't want them to understand because it's really terrible.
Mhm. And
Like, it's this terrible sort of double-edged sword.
it absolutely is, and I think that's why, speaking with a professional is so helpful, and it's not like you would have to, keep going every week or whatever, but when you are having those episodes or that month or, and everything just feels like it's blah, it's nice to be able to go and talk to somebody who at the end of the day, I mean, obviously they're gonna care and, they're gonna feel for you, but they're not gonna be directly impacted by the fact that you're gonna look at them and say, "I think I wanna die." Like, they're gonna say, "Okay, like, let's figure it out, let's talk about it." Whereas, you go to your spouse or whatever, and you're like, "I think I wanna die," and they're like, "Oh, oh, okay,
Right.
no."
And they're not equipped
Yeah.
to deal with that. So yes, yeah. Talking to a professional, it's definitely a good way to go if you can find one if you can afford one. And there are definitely more affordable ways to find that help now than there used to be. All those the online things, like BetterHelp, or that's probably the biggest one. Are I've heard good things and bad things about them, but if you can't afford a traditional person, or there's a wait list, like here in Canada, if you want to see an actual psychiatrist, you're going to be waiting a very long time right now. So
I was kind of rushed through to see a psychiatrist because I was pregnant at the time. I wanted to make sure everything was like stable. So I was kind of lucky in that respect. And actually, by the time I saw her, I was already medicated on the advice of several other doctors who were like, you need something. So by the time I saw her, I was actually doing a lot better. But I know the only reason I got in to see her like that fast was because they were concerned about like my maternal mental health.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are options, for people, whether it's the traditional route or the other route. And if you can't find a professional, at least talk to somebody, talk to somebody and so that you don't have to resort to showing people how bad you're feeling. So tell us a little bit about life now that you're here, and it's, and I also love that you said it's not just all sort of happiness all the time now. Like you've decided to stay, you've decided not to hurt yourself, which is amazing, but it doesn't mean that it's automatically everything roses all the time. But what is life like now?
I mean, it's tough, but I'm really happy on the grand scheme of things. Like I have a very loving and supportive husband. We do have a very strong relationship. We just celebrated our 8-year wedding anniversary yesterday.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we've been together since we were 18. So it's, he's my person, and I'm very lucky to have him, and we can have those real conversations with each other where we're trying to attack the problem and not each other, and that is really super important for both of us.
Yeah.
And our kids are amazing, and they're challenging in their own ways, and that's okay too. I think the best part is that I know I have the tools and the resources, and also just the knowledge, like you were saying, like if I start hitting a lot lower than I want to be, maybe I do go and talk to somebody again for a month or two just to kind of, re-up on some help. And, that's absolutely okay. And I'm very lucky I've got two that I'm thinking of in particular, amazing friends that I can go to and say, this isn't for you to freak out, and I promise you that I would never actually do it, but I think I want to die. And they'll be like, okay, like, let's get a coffee, let's get the cookies out, and let's just, because sometimes, and I remember saying this to my therapist too, sometimes I just want to be able to tell the story just to get it out. And, I've seen that meme recently, but so many times where it's like, if you're not letting it go, you're carrying it and it gets heavy.
Yeah.
You just want to speak it to get rid of the power that it's holding. So I love that I can do that. I love that I know my warning signs as well. So there was twice since my daughter was born in August where, and I absolutely hated it, where I had that intrusive thought of like, I want to hurt myself. And then I would stop and go, okay, like what's actually going on? And so having the tools from before to sit and look at, what's happening in this situation, why is that my impulse? Oh, okay, this, and this. Let's work on that. That's super helpful. It
Yes.
also lets me know when I haven't been taking my medication properly.
Right.
So I'll be like, okay, got to make sure I'm doing that again. And usually, like, when I realize that those are things that have been missing, like I skipped a couple medication doses, maybe I'm not respecting or setting my boundaries properly. When I start looking at that, I can usually bring myself back now. And that's pretty incredible to me. And I really like that it's things I'm teaching right now, my son. I mean, my daughter's still pretty much a potato, but
Really cute potato.
she's adorable. But he has, he struggles with big emotions and he is diagnosed ADHD autism. And because of that, I want to make sure I'm giving him these tools really early so that he
Yeah.
understands how to express himself. He understands that all emotions are okay, even the big, uncomfortable ones, and that he's safe to work through them with us. So that is something I'm super grateful for, having gone through the experience myself, which was not the greatest, but being
Mhm.
able to now give those lessons to him. So hopefully he doesn't have to go through it. I mean, I'm sure he'll go through a little bit here and there, but maybe not as tough.
Yeah. 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 I'm just thinking of that's the brightest outlook is that, it sucks to go through these things, but when we get to the other side, then we're that much more compassionate and empathetic and have the tools to help those close to us or
Mm,
not close to us,
sure.
like we're doing right now. We may not know who we're helping, but if we can say one little thing that's going to help somebody, then it's all been worth it.
Hmm.
And I've been through a lot um, in my own life. Someday I'll do an episode where it's just me talking. Um, but for 10 years as I'm going through all of these traumas, I'm like, why does this keep happening to me?
Mm,
Um, and now I'm like, oh, but now I can help so many more people because I've been through so much.
mhm.
And I'm, not to brag, but super compassionate and empathetic and have a lot of survival tools, and just a different life outlook than a lot of people have who have never had to face hardship, or at least not as much hardship. Everybody faces some sort of hardship, but it all hits us a little bit differently.
Definitely. And, working as a coach, when I do, sometimes either in interviews or speaking with potential, clients during discovery calls and stuff, they'll be like, well, why you? Right? Like there's a million family relationship coaches, like what sets you apart? And it's what you were just saying. It's like my experience. And you know what? Maybe that experience is what you need, and maybe it's not.
Mm-hmm,
And that's okay too. But because of what I've gone through, I have a certain expertise and understanding of certain things.
mm-hmm,
And it's like you're saying, like you're taking that now and you're, putting it out there to be accessible for people who, might the reason I love what you're doing is because there are so many people who aren't ready to take that step yet. But to be able to, throw on a podcast or throw on a video and just hear and absorb and feel like they're understood
mm-hmm,
is so huge, because taking that step from I got this to I don't got this and I got to talk to somebody can take a really long time. It did for me, because I mean, I love psychology, so I understood what was happening to me. Like I
mm-hmm,
did, I got it. I was like, okay, like I know I'm anxious. I know I have depression. Like I get it. But what I said to my husband was, I used to be able to control or fix, and now I can't. So
mm-hmm.
even though I understand, I don't know how to fix anymore. And
Right.
that's when I started going and talking with someone, and it was kind of nice. We got to kind of dive right into the tools and part of the fixing, because I did already have a background in everything.
Yeah.
I went in, I'm like, look, I know what's going on. Can you just help me work through it? And she's like, yes, this is beautiful. So it was nice. We got to, like I said, just jump right in and start. getting to like the meat of the therapy sessions, which otherwise might take, a couple of sessions to get into. So I enjoyed that. That was great.
Mm-hmm. I just reminded of when I started working with a new therapist a couple of years ago, and we did our first 2 sessions were just full intake sessions of me, going over my history and all the things that I'd been through and what was going on. And she just looked at me at the end of the second session. She was like, "That's a lot."
Yes.
I'm like, okay, because sometimes you're just like, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I shouldn't be feeling this way. Maybe, everybody else in the world seems to be able to handle their shit okay. Like, what's wrong with me? And then you tell a professional and they're like, wow, like that's a lot. It was just a little bit of validation. And we need that too, that it's okay to feel like we're about to go off the deep end because we've been through a lot. Like, legitimately, we've been through a lot.
Mhm.
And it's good to have, again, that somebody who understands so that we feel less alone, and somebody who says you are legit to feel the way that you do. But you don't have to feel that way. We can fix it. And that's where the help comes in.
I know that validation's amazing, right? Like that's when you finally just like break down. You're like, okay, I got it all out. And they're like, damn, that was a lot. You're like, oh God, I know. It's like I thought it was too, but I wasn't sure.
Uh-huh. Exactly. So if you could leave our listeners with a parting thought, what would that be?
I would say that it if you're going through it, find your person, whoever that is, whether it is a professional, whether it is like your best friend that you can just unload to and, you know, get it out because so I guess that would be it. Like, don't hang on to it and think that it's not so heavy because it is. And it gets heavier the longer you hold on to it. And if you yourself are not going through it right now, um, I would say just be aware of the people in your lives and check in from time to time. It's been so hard, especially for me with a young family. I feel like I don't check in with my people enough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they understand that. So they also know that they can come to me no matter what.
Yeah.
So I think having that relationship, at least one person in your life that you can do that, is going to get you through a lot. My best friend moved. She moved to Hamilton, so she's about an hour away now. And I hate it because I don't see her enough anymore. But when we do see each other, it literally is we got chips and cookies and drinks, and it's literally like 6 hours of just okay, you go, I go, you go, I go. And by the end of it, it's like this weight is just gone and it feels amazing. So I hope anybody who is listening has that person, and if they don't, then seek out a professional that they can make that person.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing your story and your experience. And yeah,
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
I hope it helped, and some other people got some valuable stuff out of it too.
I'm sure they did. Thank you for listening. Remember that you are loved, you are worthy, you are valuable, you are meant for more, and that it really does get better. If you are in crisis, there are numbers that you can call or text to get the help that you need. That information for Canada and the US is in the description below each episode. If you are in immediate crisis, please call 911. We love you, and I hope you'll listen again.